Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Word of Faith Response. It's great to be with you this Monday morning. We have another wonderful program that you're going to hear about Jesus Christ, and that's really what we have had in our hearts here at the Word of Faith Fellowship. Is we have really wanted to share with you about Jesus and how Jesus has changed our lives. You've heard from all different people, from different backgrounds and walks of life, and today we have Justin and Matilda Davies. And Justin actually came to the Word of Faith Fellowship when he was 2 years old. So you heard from his parents, if you were listening on some prior programs. Connie and Charles Davies shared, and they are ministers in our church, and they shared about how God brought them to the Word of Faith Fellowship many years ago. Well, Justin is their son, and he was 2 years old when he came to the Word of Faith Fellowship. He grew up in the Word of Faith Christian School, and then he graduated and he went on and obtained an engineering degree and worked in the engineering field for a while, and actually in the process of all this married his wonderful wife Matilda, who came from Sweden, and she came on a student visa, and she came here in 1997 with her family, and some of her family is here with her still at our church. And so God brought the two of them together, and they have two wonderful children. And actually now they have their own business. They have their own business in dealing with retail houseware, and right here in Rutherford County. And God has really blessed them with their business. But they want to share with you today the many things that God has done in their lives. And you're going to be really blessed today as you listen to how God brought them through different battles, struggles in their lives, and God changed their hearts through all of it. So we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to start off with Justin. So Justin, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here this morning, and just want to share a little bit about my life. As he said, I came here when I was 2 with my parents. My parents, as you remember, they shared about having marital problems and needing help, and that's why they came here. And I've always had just incredibly fond memories of the church. They're like family to me. The pastors, everybody has been so good to me, such loving people, and grew up in the church from K4 all the way to 12th grade, and really was taught to be a servant. That's what we're taught in our church, is to be servants and to just love people, to love our community, to reach out in our community. And one of the things I want to address this morning is the lies that have been spoken about us being secluded from the world and held from the world, and which has been the complete opposite of my experiences. My mom and my dad have been very active in the community in multiple different functions, the nursing home, different things of that nature, and they taught me to do that. They taught me to reach out in the community. They taught me that I was to be a Daniel in this world. That's what we're taught in our church, and that's always been my heart. And so, graduated high school, and felt like God wanted me to go into engineering school. So I went to Western Carolina University, graduated with honors, and then I went on to NC State University and got my master's in engineering. And so, in the process of all that, obviously, I was crying out for, God, who's my mate, and didn't really know. Ended up doing a lot of praying in a prayer closet and saying, Lord, I really don't know who my wife is. I don't know who that's supposed to be. And God spoke to me. He said, I'm going to give you somebody you never would have dreamed of. Didn't know what that meant. 6 months later, Matilda comes along. And that's never would have dreamed it would be her. I thought it was amazing. She's obviously a very beautiful woman and very precious inside and out. And so, I said, God, is this the one? And I said, God, if it is the one, you need to make it very clear to me. I said, give me a dream. Do something that's going to be very clear to me that this is the one, because obviously it's a very important decision. And he gave me a dream. This is the one. So that's how I knew. It was not an arranged marriage. It wasn't anything that is being said about our church that we were arranged together. God spoke to me personally about it. And it's very evident. We've been married for 10 years, happily married, and we have 2 small children, 4 and 2. But in the process of all this, I worked out in the engineering world. And I thought I was going to be an engineer. I thought I was just going to do engineering work, study processes, things of that nature. And people in the world had said, well, we see leadership capability in you. We see you're somebody that has a lot of compassion. We want you to lead people. I never really thought I had that gift, but I did. And so I was put in places of leadership just to work with people and motivate people and that sort of thing. And so I had some pretty interesting experiences. In one case, I had about 10 people under me, and we were implementing an ISO procedure. And, doing ISO, any of you that have been in manufacturing or things, is a very, rigorous process that you have to go through, auditing and everything. And so I was dealing with a guy, and the company I was working for was an Indian company, so it was a very diverse company. I was dealing with a guy named Ashok, and went to him. I said, I think we got all our processes ready. I think we're ready to go. And he says, well, this is the things that you're missing. We're going to have an audit in a couple days. I said, okay, I'll get those things done. I'll work with my team. I'll get it all taken care of. And then he sends an email out to everybody, including the general manager of North America, saying Justin has no signs of compliance, and was kind of, smearing my name a little bit. And that was a little bit difficult for me. But one of the things we're taught in our church is no matter what is said about you, you should love people. And I have to admit, at that point, all I knew to do was pray. And I went outside, walked around the pond. I said, Lord, you're going to have to help me right now. I want to walk in love with this person. I want to help them. I want to be successful. And we passed. And now he's a good friend of mine. But that's what we're taught at our church. We're taught that when we go through difficult situations, we go to God and we pray and we walk in love and we walk in compassion with people. Had another situation where we were doing a project for a large corporation. It was really the only customer we really had. And we had gone through this project. It needed to be done by a certain deadline. Well, come to find out, some of the information we received from our customer was wrong. And I had to communicate that to the customer. Now, you had to be really careful how you communicated this, because you didn't want to tell the customer, well, what you did is wrong, so it's going to take us a longer time. So I had to call them up. I said, look, John, the information we received needs to be corrected a little bit before we redo the drawings and we send them back. And he said, so you're telling me that my employees don't know what they're doing? Da, 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 da. And he just started railing out and, on speakerphone with all my employees around me. And he said, do you realize I have the power to cut all you guys' heads and do all this to you and da-da-da-da-da? And all my employees are just kind of sitting back like, oh, we're going to lose our job. And I said, now, John, listen. If I've made a mistake, I'll be glad to meet with you. Let's just talk about it. Let's have a meeting. Let's look at the facts. If the facts show that we've made an error, I'll be glad to take accountability. If the facts show that, other way, we'll work through it and we'll get it taken care of. I got off the phone and everybody's like, oh, we're going to lose our job. I said, no, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be just fine. So I go back across to the customer the next morning and talk to John. I said, John, that was a little elevated conversation, wasn't it? He says, yeah, is everything okay? I said, yeah, are you okay? Is everything fine? And he said, well, everything's going to be fine. And, he's probably having a difficult day, which is fine. And we all have, difficult days from time to time. We need someone there to say, it's going to be okay, And he says, your employees okay? I said, well, they were a little concerned they were going to lose their job. He said, well, do I need to call them up and tell them everything's okay? I said, that'd probably be good, So I became known as the firefighter. In fact, some of my employees went to Firehouse Subs and got me a firefighting hat and put it on top of my desk and said, you're the firefighter. So, nothing I really planned to be doing, but it was helping people. And that's what I wanted to do. I definitely wasn't always perfect. I made mistakes, made errors. We all make mistakes. A lot of people are just looking for someone that's honest and just want to say, you know what, I made this mistake and this is what I'm going to do to fix it. So those are just a few examples that I had in the working world of how to just work with people and just show compassion and just work through problems, because there's a lot of problems in the world. I'm sure most everybody listening has had these issues, types of things in the workforce, and learn how to work through them. But these are things that I learned in church. These are things I learned from the Word of Faith about how to have compassion, how to work with people, and how to just reach out to people in the love of God and say it's going to be okay. That's all a lot of people are just wanting to hear. It's going to be all right. One of the things I learned working out in this company was how diverse the world really is. I mean, I had a team of people working under me. They were from countries, I had to kind of list them, India, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Russia, Ethiopia, Egypt, the Congo. Very diverse. Half of them were of the Muslim faith. Another half were of the Hindu faith. There were only 2 Americans, and I was the only Christian. So I was kind of the minority, which was fine. We learned to appreciate each other's culture. We learned to appreciate, the beliefs of the Hindus is much different than the beliefs of Christians. Some of them don't even go to restaurants that serve meat. My conviction is I don't want to be at restaurants that serve alcohol. I don't want to be around people that are drinking. We learned to appreciate each other's culture, and we learned to we had a great time together. I mean, I learned a lot of different things about the world that I never heard about here in Rutherford County. It's a very diverse world. And so when I hear these allegations that I'm being held from the world or I'm being secluded, it's like, where is this coming from? I mean, I've been working out in the working world for 10 years. I was out there. And now that we have a business, we travel everywhere, and I had to kind of list where we've traveled. And from last year to this year, we've been in New Hampshire twice, Boston once, Connecticut once, New York twice, Oregon twice, Washington, Las Vegas, Atlanta 3 times, and Chicago twice. So it just doesn't fit the truth that we are being secluded. What we're taught is that God sends us out. I mean, Jesus told his disciples, I'm sending you out as a light to the world. That's what God intends for us to be, and that's what we're taught. Whatever God puts you in, he wants you to be a light. I had another unique situation I just want to briefly say. I had one guy from Iraq, happened to be the son of the Minister of Energy under Saddam Hussein. It was kind of a unique situation, kind of different. He brought me back a sand art of my name in Arabic and my name in English on one side, and kind of a different culture, kind of like a little, just different, and things you never think you'd experience in life is, what I've experienced. So I just want to say that I appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate everyone sharing or being willing to listen about the experiences I've had at the Word of Faith. I was raised here, yet I've experienced a lot of different things. Just touching on Las Vegas, I stayed in a hotel in May that had eye shot from the Mandalay Bay Hotel, which is where the shooting happened last October. So when the news came out that it was at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, I knew exactly where that was because I stayed there 6 months prior, or stayed at a hotel within eyeshot of where that was. So it just doesn't fit the narrative. I've been too many places and I've experienced too much. It just doesn't fit the narrative, and I want to thank you all for listening. And I enjoy my life here. I enjoy what we do every day. I enjoy my church. We have a great time. I'm in the orchestra at the praise and worship. I enjoy making a joyful noise every Sunday morning and Wednesday night and Sunday night. We have a great time. So
what do you play?
I play the flugelhorn. So it's kind of like a trumpet. It's a mix between a French horn and a trumpet as far as the range. And we have a great time. So with that, I'll pass it back on to you, Mark.
And you just heard from Justin about growing up in the Word of Faith and the things that God has shown him there. And one of the things we enjoy doing on this program is just sharing with you the truth about the things that God's taught us. There's been a lot of false accusations about our church, and part of the purpose of this program is not only to share about Jesus Christ, but to give you truth about the church so you know the truth. And one of the things, as Justin was sharing, that really is so important is how to learn the love of God, to learn about loving others. And when you learn about how much God loves you and that he wants you to love others, you take that with you everywhere you go. He shared about working in the engineering field, and here it was, he thought he was going to be an engineer, and all of a sudden they push him up to management. He's having to lead these groups. And one of the things that, if you were listening, the company saw was they saw the love of God in his heart, and they saw that he had something in his heart that he could help people. And that's really the most important message that we can share, is that Jesus loves us, and when you let that in your heart, you just love everybody around you. So we appreciate you sharing that, Justin. So now let's hear from his wife, Matilda.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mark, and thank you, Jim, for having us here. I was thinking about all this morning, and I thought, I really would have liked to have been born and raised at Word of Faith. It would have avoided a lot of heartache that I went through growing up. Like Mark said in the beginning, I was born and raised in Sweden. My father was an alcoholic and very abusive. And so my mother had a child before me, so it was my older sister, then it was me, and then another little girl came along. And my mom went through this for about 7 years and had enough. When he started touching us, it was enough. So we ended up, my older sister and I ended up at a children's home, and my mother ended up in a mental hospital, actually, because of what she had gone through. And my younger sister lived with my grandmother. So when my mother came out of the mental hospital and got us back, she actually was raised in a Christian home, but had deviated from that when she married my father. And so she was searching for answers, and ended up going back to church. And so through a series of events, she ended up marrying another man that she met at church, very precious, and they're still married. And they had 2 children. And so altogether, my mom had 5 girls. And he is just like my father. My stepfather is just like my father. But so we moved around a lot. And because of the searching that my mom had, there were several different churches that we attended. And it so happened that each church that we attended, the pastors had children that were my age. And they became my friends, and I saw a lot of what was going on in the homes of the pastors. And just for one example, the one pastor, both the daughters ended up being porn stars, and that was the lifestyle that they had. And let's see, trying to make a long story short here, but the largest church in Sweden, I also was very good friends with the pastor's son. And at this time I was 14 years old, and I was very confused, because also with growing up, going between, my mom had full custody, but we had to do visitations with my father. So I had the confusing part of living somewhat in a Christian home with my mother, and then my father was totally the opposite. And I was very confused. And then also seeing what I saw in the church and the different places that we did go. When I turned 14, there was a lot of wounds and hurts. From that point, before that point, I had tried being the white sheep in the family, so to speak. My sister was the black sheep, my older sister was, and I did not want to do what she had done, and so I tried to hold it all together and just be the good girl. And when I turned 14, I couldn't contain it anymore. I got very rebellious, would not talk to my mother, my stepfather. I stopped going to church. I was rebellious at school. I even jumped out of the window in the middle of class and ran away. That kind of thing is what was happening with me. And and so at that point, my mother knew that if she didn't get me help, she was going to lose me, like she had lost my older sister. My older sister got messed up with the pastor's children that ended up being the porn stars. So my mom knew that she was going to lose me that summer, and it was the summer of '94 at that point. And so it was so amazing to see how God has a hold of our lives and everything that we go through, because one of the Bible schools that my mom had attended, there was some people that had been coming here to the Word of Faith for some years, and then they had started a church in Sweden. And at that point, actually, Sam and Jane used to travel over to Sweden and preach at the largest church in Sweden. And that's actually, I saw a picture of them when I was 8, and when I saw that picture of them, it was like something just hit. My heart was, the countenance, what I saw on them was peace, happiness. The glory of God is what I saw on that picture. And I remember it was a pamphlet of all kinds of preachers that were coming to that church. to preach. And out of all those different ones from all over the world were coming, that picture of them is what jumped out at me.
You're talking about Sam and Jane,
Sam
the
and
pastors
Jane,
of Word
yes.
of Faith Fellowship.
Yes, the pastors, my pastors now. And so anyhow, I'm trying to think here. My mom got in touch. It was a amazing summer because I had totally cut my parents off, my stepfather and my mother. I was not talking to them at all. And so my mom was just crying out to God what to do. And she ended up getting in touch with the pastors of the church that they had been here and started a church in Sweden. And they said, yes, we're going to North Carolina, because my mom said, I have got to get Matilda to Spindale. I have got to get her to Sam and Jane's church. That is the only place I know she can get help. And so she got in touch with the pastors in the church in Sweden, and they said, yes, we're going for a children's seminar, and we actually have, this is back when tickets for airplanes, they did it differently. And they said, we have a ticket open. You know, one of our youngest daughters is not going to go. Bring her here. And so my mom and my stepfather drove for hours and got me to where I could come over here for that summer. And I'll never forget when I heard the prayer for the first time, because at this point I was so confused. I did not want to go the path of my older sister. And I didn't like what I had seen in church, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I really was suicidal, and so I was just very, very depressed. And so when I got here that summer, I got prayer every day, and I loved it. I loved it. It was like I felt like a lid just came off of me every time I got prayer, and more layers of just depression. And of course, I just came here to visit. So I went back to Sweden, and this went on for 3 summers. I came to visit, and just loved it. So, but then there was a point there was another disappointment, that the church that we ended up attending, that was affiliated with Sam and Jane's church, the pastor, I was actually living with the pastors at that time, just to help them with their children. I cooked for them, I cleaned, I did anything they needed. Well, I found out that the pastor was in adultery with somebody else in the church. And so I was very aware of what was going on. And the pastor's wife was coming to me saying, everybody knows what's going on here. You know, everybody in the church knows what's going on. What should I do? Because I was like her oldest daughter at that point, and they had really taken me in to help me, and I was helping them. And I said, well, does Sam and Jane know about what's going on? And she said, no. I said, you need to call them. You need to call Sam and Jane. I know that's where we're going to get help. And so she did. And Jane couldn't come right at the first, so Sam and Douglas came over. And I know, you know, who Douglas is, very active in the ministry in the church as well. And they came just to see what was going on at first before Jane could make it over. And even through all of this disappointment, I was once again just thinking, I'm going to give up. You know, this thing about Christianity, this is not working. And again, very suicidal. I mean, I was even contemplating of the different ways of how I could do it, whether I was going to do pills. I knew that I did not want my mother finding me, and I didn't want it to be bloody. So I was thinking pills. We would live close to the water. I was thinking maybe I could tie something heavy to myself and just jump in the water somewhere deep. And I was just very confused again. And so when Douglas and Sam got there, I had cooked a meal. And Douglas got up from the table and started washing the dishes. He started cleaning off the table and washing the dishes. I had never, in all the years that I had been with pastors in their homes, I had never seen a minister do something like that. And I thought, well, maybe there is something different about this church, really, because I had been coming, for 3 years, like I said, visiting. But then when that happened with the pastor being in adultery, I just wasn't sure. And so, anyways, and so I had ended up telling Sam at that point when he was there for that visit that I need help. I need help. And so he said, well, I'm going to tell Jane when I get back, and she will give you a call. And sure enough, busy as she is over here, taking care of all the people here, she called me in Sweden. And I told her, I said, I'm thinking about taking my life. And, in my thinking at that point, that was the way out. And I was thinking, because I was aware of heaven and hell. And I didn't want to go to hell. So I thought, well, if I repent right before I kill myself, then I'll still go to heaven. Well, Jane said, when I told Jane that on the phone, she said, you better not touch yourself. You better not do one thing. She said in Revelations 21:8, it says that no murderers will be in heaven. And if you kill yourself, you will be a murderer. So that totally dismissed it. And that spoke so loud to me that a pastor would take the time all the way here from the United States to call me for my life. And so I ended up coming here. The pastor said he was going to get some help. He decided not to. And that whole church ended up splitting. And so I was here that summer and was still not sure exactly what I was going to do. And then I ended up getting a student visa and got a degree in business with honors from Limestone, and met Justin in church, and we got married. And like he said, 10 years, very happy. My family's still here with me, my mother, my stepfather, 2 sisters. We absolutely love it. And there was a period of time when we felt like it was time for us to start our family, and we were having trouble. And we had seen some doctors here in the States, and ended up having to go to Sweden because the insurance and the cost for me was much better in Sweden. And we had already spent a lot of money here, and the doctors had just said, we don't know what's wrong. We don't know if there's ever a chance you're going to have children. So the doctor in Sweden, there was 2 worldwide known doctors in Sweden that people from all the world go to, were helping us. And there was this one morning, I was over in Sweden for 4 months. There was this one morning, we have Bible at our Christian school every morning, and I was listening in from Sweden. And Jane, Grandma Jane, like I call her grandmother, she said that one morning, she said, I feel like we need to pray for Matilda right now, and we need to come against this spirit of death that's at her. And so from that morning on, I felt like something came off of me, from where all these doctors had said, no, there's no possibility, we don't know. And our son came along. And then the doctors over there in Sweden had said, well, if you ever want more children, you're going to have to come back here. And that didn't have to be. God intervened, and we have 2 beautiful children. We're very happy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we just love our life.
Yeah.
We love our life. And like Justin said, we work together in the business. Mm-hmm. We travel all over the country. We've had to go to Sweden for the business, Germany. And there's a lot out there. We've seen a lot. And I would not have it any other way than live here in Little Spinder, North Carolina.
And that's great. Thank you so much, Matilda. And you just heard just a wonderful testimony about how God reached out to Matilda in the midst of Sweden growing up. God had his hand on her life all through it. God saw the cry in her heart, and God knew exactly what needed to happen for Matilda. And God brought the ministers to her life, and here she is now serving God, loving Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so we appreciate you listening again. Please go to our website at wordoffaithfellowship.org, and you'll hear more radio programs if you've missed any. We've been sharing testimonies for months now, and it's so good to tell about what Jesus has done. And we hope that you have a wonderful day today. Thank you.